Adams Archive.
Hello, you beautiful people, and welcome to the Adams Archive. My name is Austin Adams, and thank you so much for listening today. On today's episode, we are going to be following up on what is the biggest, single largest political scandal of my lifetime, which would be the Donald Trump assassination. Now, there's been tons of information that has come out since the original assassination attempt that I did the day after on our last podcast. So we're going to be talking through all of that. There's been tons of new things that have come out. There has been a Congressional Oversight Committee hearing as of today that we will be breaking down all of the most interesting portions of. We'll also be talking about Joe Biden. Now, Joe Biden hasn't been seen for 5 days. 5 days. Just 4 days after Donald Trump's assassination attempt. Joe Biden hasn't been seen for 5 days. And during those 5 days, he actually pulled out of the presidential race for 2024. Now, the reason that's interesting, not because it's not something that we didn't all predict and you've heard me talk about before, but the real reason it's interesting is because the manner in which it was done. So we will get into all of that because some people are speculating. Some people are speculating. Joe Biden could even be dead. So we will dive into all of that. I also want to touch on a couple other things because I don't just want to talk on just this one thing. There's a couple other things that I find to be interesting. One is that Elon Musk talked about the woke mind virus and how it essentially left his son dead after having gone through a transition of hormone replacement therapy. So we'll talk about that first. And then after that, we will talk about the UN hearing that was conducted, which essentially said that what Israel has done in the occupation that it has had is illegal according to international law. So we will touch on those topics first, and then we will dive into the deep dive today, which is on, is Joe Biden alive? Was there a second shooter? What are some of the more interesting conspiracies that have come out since the shooting, at least the night after? All of that and more. But first, I need you to hit that subscribe button. I need you to leave a 5-star review. A 5-star review is really the only thing that you can do to help grow this podcast. Podcasts don't really grow without your help. I don't know if you know that or not, but like all the social media views that I get, hundreds of thousands, millions, all of that, like 4, 5, 7, 10, 20 million views in a month, doesn't matter. It doesn't translate to people listening to the podcast. The only way that people listen to the podcast is if you tell them about it. If you leave a 5-star review. Those are really the only ways that this gets around. And obviously, that's what I need. I need you to grow the podcast with me. I know you enjoy this podcast. If you're listening today, I appreciate you more than you'd ever know. I love doing this podcast. I love talking to you guys. It gives me an outlet. It lets me rant to somebody who's not going to give me an eye roll, who's on the same page as me. I love this. I love you. Thank you so much. Share the podcast with people that you know. Hey, did you hear that people thought Joe Biden was dead? Did you hear that there was a second shooter? Potentially. Any which way. However you want to talk about it, but talk about it. The Adams Archive. Tell your friends, all right? Tell your family, tell your mama, tell your wife, tell your kids. I don't care who you tell. Tell the homeless guy on the side of the road. As long as he has a phone and he can listen. Next, before we jump into it, is going to be the fact that I don't know if you know this or not. You should if you've been paying attention. But I launched a company. A company for you. Yes, you listening to this right now. I launched a company just for you. It's called Ronin. And if you don't know, now you know. What Ronin does is it creates high-quality Faraday goods, which protects you from modern technology. This very baseball hat on my head is the tinfoil hat that I wear to protect me from the EMFs that are around me, that is being emitted by this laptop that I am doing this on, from this cell phone right here next to me, from all of the technology, the Wi-Fi router that is emitting all of the frequencies around us all the time, the 5G tower that's 20 feet away from my house, and yours too. There's several things that you can do to help yourself be protected from modern technology. One is have Faraday clothing, a Faraday hat, because EMFs primarily target your brain, It's been proven in several PubMed studies that I'd happily share to you if you want to message me. And also, there's phone sleeves. Like this guy right here. This is a phone sleeve. All you do is you take this phone sleeve, you take your beautiful electronic device, and you drop it in this sleeve. And as soon as you do that, it stops all inbound and outbound signals. You vanish. All the corporations, all the government institutions, all those people, your ex-girlfriend, everybody who's trying to track your every move, beautiful. Stops you from being tracked. Joe Rogan, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Andrew Huberman, all of these people have been talking about Faraday sleeves as a way to protect yourself from the dystopian world that we live in today. Now, what's interesting about this is I actually posted all of our stuff's now on Amazon. You can go to Amazon, search Ronan Faraday. You can find our wallets, you can find our beanies, you can find our hats. The phone sleeves will be available shortly, but you can also go to ronanbasics.com. ronanbasics.com, and we actually tried to put up sponsored posts for Ronan, and they denied us. Do you want to know why? It had something to do with evading law enforcement. So I'll talk about that a little bit later. But for now, let's jump into it.
The Adams Archive.
All right. So the very first thing that we're going to talk about today is going to be the fact that the top UN court says that Israel's occupation of the West Bank in East Jerusalem is unlawful. You know, all the things that we've been saying for quite some time about what's going on in Palestine, how the Israeli occupation of Palestine is wrong, how the war was preemptively started as a result of not just the terrorist attack, which is definitely obviously a great reason to also fight back against a organization like Hamas, which is a terrorist organization, which did something that was terrible. But also, there was the continued occupation of Palestine. And so I think this is important to talk about because amongst all of the news cycles that have been just punching you in the face, left, right hooks, just coming at you from everywhere, one thing that you might have missed is the validation of everybody who's been telling you that what Israel is doing may not be specifically just to find and seek revenge on the terrorists who conducted this attack. No. What this UN court is saying is that the top United Nations court in the Hague, Hagu, said Friday that Israel's 57-year occupation of the West Bank and East Jerusalem is unlawful and called on Israel to cease its presence in the occupied territories, including dismantling Israeli settlements there and paying reparations. The advisory decision by the International Court of Justice is non-binding and is unlikely to have much real impact on the ground in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, where the UN estimates around 700,000 Israelis live. But the decision was the first time the court had issued an opinion on the legality of Israel's occupation and will be another blow to Israel's international standing. Now, that's what we've seen all along. Israel got a bunch of support immediately following the terrorist attacks, as they should. Right? Somebody wants to bully you. Somebody wants to throw the first punch. You should knock their ass out. But to continue mounting them and punching them over and over and over again, and then as soon as they're knocked out, you go on and start beating their wife and their children and their children's friends and dismantling their home. Maybe that's where we should draw the line. And so we've been talking about this, right? There's been a reason that you have heard, and this is a counter narrative. One thing you have to know about me, and one thing you probably know about me if you've listened to me this long, or you're listening today, is the fact that I am not I'm not just going to speak a narrative because it's what other people are talking about that maybe have alignments with the parties that I align with more, whether it's the Libertarian Party, whether it's the Republican Party, whatever it is. I have my own beliefs. I have my own beliefs on almost every single topic. And my belief on this topic has always been longstanding in the Israeli and Palestinian conflict that what Israel is doing is wrong. That the absolute overboard reaction to this horrific terrorist attack that should have had a reaction, but the overboard reaction as a result was not due to revenge. And revenge is never the answer. We know that. But it was due to the fact that they want to continue to encroach upon the nation that is Palestine, right? They want to continue to take up territories so that, if you know the history of Palestine, without going too far deep into this, because that's not the point of this podcast, but I do just want to make this point that Israel has only been a nation since World War II, after the I believe it was the Abraham Accord, where the Rothschilds established the nation state after funding Great Britain in the war, right? World War I. So when you start to look into the history of this, you start to realize that, okay, maybe this is an occupation. Maybe what they're doing is wrong. Maybe the reason for this extreme reaction wasn't specifically just due to the loss of lives in that event, which was, again, and I will restate it, horrific, but not justifiable to continue this campaign that they have been going on for this period of time, right? So it goes on to say, but that the state of Israel is under the obligation to bring an end to its unlawful presence in the occupied Palestinian territory as rapidly as possible, said ICJ President Nawaf Salam, who delivered the decision for the 15-member court. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu rejected the decision, condemning its reasoning as lies. The Jewish people are not conquerors in their own land. Not your land, buddy. Not your land. No matter how many biblical references you try to make based off of wrongful translations, that is not your land. It's not your land. The only reason you have that land is because of the Rothschilds family. So this is just further reason to understand, further validation to the people who questioned this narrative, that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the right thing happening, right? Amongst all of the left and right hooks going on in American politics, I hope that you see this article. I hope that you go research this. And I hope that you're not just singularly drawn into one thing going on, that you miss the fact that one of the most serious things that have happened, in our world in the last 2 years is coming to a head, and there's being very, very serious information coming out about it. Now, the second thing that I wanted to touch on that is outside of the scope of Donald Trump, and then we'll get to that in just a moment, but I do want to talk about a couple other things first, is that Elon Musk had an interview with Jordan Peterson. And in this interview, Elon Musk tells Jordan Peterson that his son, trans Javier, or Xavier, one of the two. I never know which one's Javier and which one's Xavier. I think it depends on whether you're Mexican or not. Xavier was killed by the woke mind virus. Now, I don't know if this is hyperbole. It seems to me like it might be hyperbole. I don't think he was actually killed. Like, there's a lot of videos going around about Elon Musk saying his son was killed by the woke mind virus, like actually thinking that he was killed, he was dead, right? But I think it's hyperbole. It says Elon Musk told Jordan Peterson that his son was killed. His son was killed by the woke mind virus during a lengthy, wide-ranging interview. And Musk has said that he is determined to destroy the woke mind virus as a result. And he said after losing his son to the cult, Musk said that gender-affirming care is not only a bad euphemism, but evil. He also said that puberty blockers are sterilization drugs and that the entire undertaking of child sex changes is macabre. Macabre. Too smart for me. I lost my son, essentially, right? Essentially is important there. He didn't lose his son, right? He became a girl. But I didn't know this. Elon had a trans son. Explained Musk in an interview with psychologist Jordan Peterson, my son Xavier is dead, killed by the woke mind virus, Elon said. So I vowed to destroy the woke mind virus after that. He discussed how absurd it is that children can't get tattoos, but that they can take permanent actions towards sex changes. Musk claimed that he was tricked into allowing his son to undergo medical transition based on a disapproved lie that not greenlighting a child's transition causes them to commit suicide. So here's the clip. Let's watch it.
I mean, going back to the so-called gender-affirming care, which is a terrible euphemism.
That's for sure.
It's really a child sterilization, is what it should be.
No, there's mutilation too.
Mutilation.
Right. Yeah, well, we want to make sure that that amalgam is.
Sure, fair enough.
Yeah.
It's child mutilation and sterilization.
Yeah. Under the guise of gender-affirming care and compassion.
Right.
I can't.
It's evil.
Literally
I think
can't
it's evil.
imagine anything worse than that.
Yes, it's evil. I mean, you're taking kids who are obviously often far below the age of consent.
Yep. Confused, miserable.
Yes. The reality is that almost every child goes through some kind of identity crisis.
It's part of puberty.
Exactly. It's just part of growing up. It's very possible for adults to manipulate children who are having a natural identity crisis into believing that they are the wrong gender.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that they need to be the other gender, or they need to be a boy, or a boy needs to be a girl, and that
will solve all their problems.
And that will solve their problems, and then they give them sterilizing drugs, which are called also a misnomer, puberty blocker. These are sterilization drugs, so they can never have children again.
Yeah.
They can have double mastectomies, the mutilation.
They have their forearms stripped to build non-functioning penises.
Yeah, it's macabre. I mean, we have an age of consent for a reason. That the reason you can't get, say, tattoos below age 18, or drink or drive. There are ages at which you can do things, because if we allow children to take permanent actions when they're 10, 12, 14 years old, they will do things that they subsequently greatly regret.
There you go. Right. And that's probably a very, very interesting discussion between very intelligent people. But it's a great point. And honestly, as I'm going through this and listening, we haven't heard very much in terms of the trans stuff in a little bit of time. And I think if you recall, if you've been listening for quite some time, you heard me almost get sick of the trans conversation because it was so annoying. It was everything that you had to talk about because it was so shoved in your face by all the political organizations, all of the largest corporations in the world. And I'm happy that it's come to a point with the trans ideology that it's implied that they're crazy. It's implied that you shouldn't put your kid on puberty blockers. It is well known now that the trans ideology was literally a Trojan horse to implement the hypersexualization of children. And I'm happy I don't have to talk about it every episode now, because it became so annoying that every major news article had something to do with trans. And it was a necessary conversation because it was so prevalent in modern society that it was it was something we had to fight. But now it's just well known, right? I don't think that it's as prevalent of a narrative now that people want to have their children be trans. And I mean, obviously there's always going to be the hyper left that is always going to do whatever it is, whether it's wearing a mask in a car by themselves or transitioning their child without thinking through the long-term effects of their health for the societal positioning that you get by being the most victimized person in culture. But I'm glad to see that they're, obviously, I can't imagine what Elon had to go through with this to get to a point where he has this discussion. It had to have been horrendous. And here he talks about it a little bit more. And so let's go ahead and finish this out.
Why are you willing to make this an issue? Do you think? I mean,
well,
it's sort of like the
happened to one of
natalist issue.
It happened to one of my older boys, where I was essentially tricked into signing documents for one of my older boys, Xavier. This was before I had really any understanding of what was going on, and we had COVID going on, and so there was a lot of confusion.
So fairly recent.
And
that's crazy.
you know, I was told, oh, Xavier might commit suicide if he.
That was a lie right from the outset. No reliable clinician ever believed that. There was never any evidence for that. And also, if there's a higher suicide rate, the reason is because of the underlying depression and anxiety and not because of the gender dysphoria. And every goddamn clinician knows that too. And they're too cowardly to come out and say it. Right? And so and then we end up in exactly, when I saw that lie start to propagate, it just made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It's like, I see. So you're telling parents that unless they agree to this radical transformation that their children are going to die, and you think that's moral, and you think that's true. That is so pathological that it's almost incomprehensible. I can't imagine anything worse. I can't imagine a therapist doing anything worse than that, or sitting by idly and remaining silent while his colleagues are doing it. It's pathetic.
It's incredibly evil, and I agree with you that people that have been promoting this should go to prison.
It won't stop till that happens.
Yeah.
It'll just go underground. Puberty blockers are being accessed online by kids all the time through non-medical channels. So yeah,
Right.
It's not going to stop. Yeah. Okay, so I see. So that's
So I was
personal connection.
tricked into doing this, and it wasn't explained to me that puberty blockers are actually just sterilization drugs. Anyway.
It's interesting to see the energy of Elon versus Jordan Peterson, like people who are probably, completely different intellectually in the way that they've pursued their endeavors, like between the way that Elon Musk has gone much more tangibly and the way that Jordan Peterson has gone much more intellectually in philosophy versus engineering. And to see the way that they kind of interact is very interesting. So I'm sure it's a very, very, captivating episode, but also a little bit of some insight into the differentiation between intellect and different endeavors, right? Elon Musk is much slower in the way that he's speaking. Jordan Peterson is very quick to come up with these points that are like very, very good talking points, but maybe the way that Elon's brain is thinking is much slower, because maybe that's just because this is personal to him and his son and his family and the way that this has affected them. And if it can affect Elon Musk and his family and his son, it can affect you too. That's the scary part about this. Elon Musk wasn't like red-pilled in the last 2-3 years. I'm sure he's held a lot of his political ideologies for quite some time, not just before COVID. So he's one of the most intelligent people in the history of humanity. And they convinced Elon Musk that you should put your son on puberty blockers or he's going to commit suicide. And that's because it's such an emotional play and it's such a powerful argument that how do you even fight back against that when everybody around you is telling you that? Probably his wife. I don't know which one of his wives was the one, but maybe it was Grimes or one of the other ones. But in all of this, it is absolutely flooring to see that they got Elon to agree with this. And again, there hasn't been a full statement on this to where like I think there's a lot of confusion when it comes to this, that it like actually killed his son. I don't believe that's the case. It's not coming right out and saying that, but I think he's saying like it killed my son and turned him into my daughter, right? I think that's kind of the ego death that he's discussing here.
And so I lost my son, essentially. They call it dead naming for a reason.
Yeah,
all right. So the reason it's called dead naming is because your son is dead. So my son Xavier is dead, killed by the woke mind virus.
I'm sorry to hear that.
So let's stop there because that's very interesting, and that's exactly what I was hoping to see was some clarification here, where it wasn't being misquoted within Instagram and X so that you get clicks and stuff to think that his son actually died from the puberty blockers. No, his son died in his heart. And imagine looking back at this. You're a 30-year-old man and your father's, 65 now, whatever he's going to be at that point. But imagine looking back at this and realizing the heartache that you put your father through because you were convinced. It's not just about convincing the parents, because at some point the child was convinced too by this woke mind virus and by the people that's surrounding them, by the psychologists or the psychiatrists that they're being convinced that this is the problem and that you need to do X, Y, and Z to solve it. Imagine being the father, and I've posted this before. There was a great Dr. Phil video that came out showing that a father seeing his son for the first time dressed as a woman, pretending to be a woman. And this father just broke down because I can't imagine like seeing, it's not just about the man versus woman. It's not just about the genitals. It's not just about it's about the spirit of your child. And realizing that they were broken down by society so much. They were chiseled by culture. They were chiseled by false philosophy. They were chiseled down by fake psychology to the point where they were so broken, so empty, so defeated that they allowed themselves to be filled by false prophets and false ideologies to the point where they wanted to completely, it's not dead naming, it's they killed themselves off. And that would be so defeating as a parent, to see that your child became so empty within the shell of their body that they could be filled with such a false ideology, and that maybe, just maybe, you could have done something within that timeline of events. Like you would hope that you could have done something that would have changed that outcome for them. But you didn't. And here you are. And here they are presenting this way in front of you. And all you see is a shell of the child who used to laugh and play and roll on the ground with you and dance to music and just be a pure version of themselves, to be so I don't know, like so broken, to have them have to put the pieces of their shattered self back together in such a wrong way and think that that was the answer to fulfill themselves from the feelings that they were missing. Terrible. Terrible. So 1 minute left and then we'll move on to the next topic here.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what that would be like.
Yeah. So,
yeah, and there's lots of people in that situation now.
right.
It's not pretty, and lots of demolished kids.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's a good reason to be the final straw. All right, so let's.
So I vowed to destroy the woke mind virus after that.
Why are
And
you
see
willing
the
to make this?
interjection, right? You see what I'm talking about with Jordan Peterson, the interjection, and not just letting him finish his sentence even as you're going through the very end of that clip. It's interesting to see somebody who's such a profound psychologist to interject so quickly before the thoughts are even made or conveyed, right? So listen to this one more time.
That's a good reason to be the final straw. All right, so let's.
So I vowed to destroy the woke
Right,
mind.
so he interjects once.
All right, so let's demolish kids.
Yes.
Yeah, well,
So-
that's a good reason
right,
to be the final
so
straw.
interjects. It's interesting. It's interesting. I'm surprised by that with Jordan Peterson, honestly, that he didn't let him kind of convey his thoughts a little bit more coherently without being interjected. But anyways, there you go. Those are the topics. Now we're going to go into the deep dive. Now we're going to talk about the congressional hearing, the committee that was done today. There was an oversight committee where they had all of the representatives have lined up questions to question the director of the Secret Service. And she got grilled for 5 hours. She got destroyed. And guess what she did? Just like if you recall all the way back to the January 6th Oversight Committee hearing, where the FBI director came in and was questioned by this very same group of people, or similar group of people. And guess what she did? The same exact thing. You never see somebody from a three-letter agency or somebody from a position of power, somebody who's supposed to be protecting the American people or the politicians within it, that actually comes into one of these committee hearings and answers questions. It is baffling to me. If you or I went into a court and answered questions the same way that the director of the Secret Service or the director of the FBI from the January 6th committee answered questions, you would be grilled by the judge. You would be told that you have to answer the question, sir. Answer the question. You have to answer the question. It is baffling to me that we live in a world, we live in a democracy, we live in the United States of America, and the very same people that we pay the salary of with our tax dollars are not forced to go into these committees after being subpoenaed to be there, right? This woman would not show up there on her own accord. Would not. She had to be forced to be there. She had to get a letter stating, show up here or else. And then finally she agreed to it. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to watch some of my favorite portions, some of my favorite lines of questioning from some of my favorite people today. I may even include some of my least favorite people like AOC. But what you found from this committee hearing was that left, right, Democrat, Republican, they all agreed. The director of the Secret Service should resign. Every single person within this committee hearing, besides maybe one or two people who just used it as the opportunity to grossly push their agenda about gun rights or racism or whatever. It was like so much mental gymnastics from just a couple people, but everybody else essentially agreed that this woman should resign and that everything that happened on July 11th was wrong and absolutely, if not just complete incompetence, intentional. So let's go ahead and we'll pull this up and we'll watch some of these clips together. Now, one of my first favorite people to go on to this hearing was Jim Jordan, and we'll go ahead and we will watch him first. Now, the director of the FBI gave her own opening statement, so maybe we'll give her a second to give that, but I don't know if I want to go right into that. Let's go ahead and look at Jim Jordan's. Here we go.
Days out, I would say, as I have said from the very outset, I accept responsibility for this tragedy. We are going to look into how this happened, and we are going to take corrective action to ensure that it never happens again.
Well, I appreciate that, and I hope you will act with vigor and focus and intensity, and it seems you understand the gravity and solemnity of this to the American people. Millions and millions of Americans don't feel safe with all the AR-15s out there. We thought at least the president of the United States or a former president.
Were you guessing or lying?
Here's Jim Jordan.
Day after President Trump is shot, Secret Service spokesman Anthony Guglielmi said, quote, the assertion that a member of the former president's security team requested additional security resources that the U.S. Secret Service or the Department of Homeland Security rebuffed is absolutely false. The next day, Secretary Mayorkas said, that is an unequivocally false assertion. We had not received any request for additional security measures that were rebuffed. But 5 days later, the Washington Post said this, top officials repeatedly rejected requests from Donald Trump's security detail for more personnel. The next day, the New York Times said this, Mr. Guglielmi acknowledged that the Secret Service had turned down some requests for additional federal security assets for Mr. Trump's detail. So which is it? Because both statements can't be true. Were you guessing or lying when you said you didn't turn down requests from President Trump's detail?
Neither, sir, and I appreciate the question.
Well, what were you doing? Because those statements don't jive.
And what's interesting about this is as you see this go on, this is very, very early. This is at 8:38 a.m. Mountain Time. As this goes on and on and on, you see her just break down. The cracks start to come in. This is a 5-hour hearing, and I'm only going to show you probably 10, 15 minutes of it at the most, but we'll talk through it as we go through. But It's very interesting to see her demeanor. Thank you, Mr. Jordan, for your input here and your line of questioning. I would love to answer that for you. But later on, you see she starts to get irritated, agitated, and starts to break down. But just keep that in mind as we walk through this.
So what I can tell you is that for the event in Butler, there were no requests that were denied. As far as requests...
Well, maybe they got tired of asking. Maybe you turned them down so darn much, they said, not worth asking. How many times did you turn them down ahead of that?
I think that it is important to distinguish between what some people may view as a denial of an asset or a request.
Well, is Mr. Guglielmi your spokesperson? He said he acknowledged the Secret Service had turned down some requests. I'm asking how many?
A denial of a request does not equal a vulnerability.
Well, tell me what it is.
There are a number of ways that threats and risks can be mitigated with a number of different assets, whether that be through personnel, whether that be through technology or other resources.
Well, tell the committee which it was. They asked for additional help in some form or another. You told them no. How many times did you tell them no, and what did you tell them no to?
Again, I can...
The ASMR, like... that you have to listen to her, I'm so sorry. I didn't even hear that till I put my headphones on. So hopefully you can't hear what I hear. But now I hear it, and it's driving me crazy.
Not speak to specific incidents, but I can tell you in general terms, the Secret Service is judicious with their resources based on...
What does some requests mean? How many times? Some indicate requests is plural.
Me, sir. What I can tell you is that there are times...
You didn't get briefed on how many times you turned down the Trump detail?
Now, what you find is, I believe a little bit later than this, she perjures herself when he talks about Mayorkas. Completely a little bit later, you'll find that the person that they're relying on for some of this information says that that's false. Like, I wasn't responsible for this. There was requests that were denied. I believe that this is one of the parts that they talk about where she actually perjured herself as a result.
They asked for additional help?
I'm sorry.
You didn't get briefed on that before you came to this hearing, knowing you were going to get asked that question?
What I can tell you is that in generic terms, when details make a request, there are times that there are alternate ways to cover off on that threat or that risk.
But that's not what he said. He said they were denied certain requests, some requests. This is your spokesperson, not me talking. This is the Secret Service talking. And what a change from absolutely false, unequivocally false to, oh, by the way, there were some times where we didn't give them what they wanted. That's a huge change in 5 days. And the fact that you can't answer how many times you did that, that's pretty darn frustrating, not just for me, but for the country.
I hear your frustration.
Let me ask you this. Were any of those requests denied to President Trump's detail after you knew about the Iranian threat?
What I can tell you, again, I don't know the specifics, is that there are times when we can fill a request. It doesn't necessarily have to be with a Secret Service asset or resource. We can fill that request with locally available assets.
You spoke to anyone at the White House since July 13th?
Yes, I have.
Who'd you talk to?
I have briefed the President and the Vice President.
Talked to the First Lady?
No, I have not.
Talked to the White House staff? Anyone in the White House communications?
No, I have not.
Have you talked to the counter sniper who took the shot that took out the bad guy?
Yes, I have.
And can you tell us about that conversation?
I would not want to reveal conversations that I've had with my employees.
But that's exactly the kind of information the American people want to know. American people who pay your salary.
I understand. This is an ongoing investigation, and
Who's all doing the investigating at Secret Service? I know the Inspector General, but is there also an internal investigation in addition to the Inspector General?
We are conducting a mission assurance investigation internally, yes.
We have internally investigated ourselves and found that we have done no wrongdoing. That's the unbelievably consistent playbook of all of these organizations. When it comes to the FBI, when it comes to the Secret Service, when it comes to the CIA, the most flooring part about this is this isn't the first time. This has happened over and over and over and over again historically. The three-letter agencies, the people who are responsible for protecting the President of the United States, the people who are responsible for protecting our democracy, are generally the ones involved In these types of assassination attempts, you want to talk about John Lennon, you want to talk about John F. Kennedy, you want to talk about Abraham Lincoln, you want to talk about any one of these political assassinations. Any one of them. Martin Luther King Jr. Almost every time there is a 3-letter agency involved. There is and it's unfortunate that the Secret Service only has 2 letters because it just fits so perfectly. But who's to say, when we look at this situation, it is so unbelievably evident that the narrative that we're being told is not the completely accurate story. And here's something that I would say to Trump about this. Donald Trump, if this does not incite you to release every single classified document surrounding John F. Kennedy's assassination from the CIA, nothing will. How do you not have a threat on your life? How do you not have literally almost identical situations to what happened in the assassination attempt against John F. Kennedy and not go back and release all the documents? How do you not realize that their government of the United States of America is at war with itself, is at war with its politicians unless they fall in line? And the only way to defeat darkness is by shining a light on it. Is by taking this situation and realizing that you should release every single classified document of the Kennedy assassination. Every single one. Every single American in the United States of America, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, whatever, should absolutely be calling on Donald Trump. If he is not just doing it outright by himself. The JFK documents being released should absolutely be an implied result of the Trump assassination attempt. There is no reason. I cannot imagine Donald Trump has this happen to him and does not realize that he should release every single document exposing exactly what happened that day against John F. Kennedy. Because I would hope a president 50 years from now who has the opportunity to do the same for him would do so, especially after an assassination attempt on his own life. It would be unbelievable. It would be ridiculous if Donald Trump does not release those documents. That should be on day one of Donald Trump's 2024 election, as 2025 presidential position. The very first day Donald Trump gets in office, he should release every single John F. Kennedy assassination document that has been held from the American people immediately upon finding office. That should be priority number one, is exposing the corrupt institutions that are the structural foundation of our nation. Absolutely 100% day one action by Donald Trump. And if this doesn't cause Donald Trump to expose the JFK documents that have been classified for so long, no president, no political candidate in the future will ever do so. None, never. You can kiss the documents goodbye that were classified surrounding JFK's assassination if Trump doesn't do it. I cannot fathom a world where you have an assassination attempt on your life, a bullet graze your head millimeters away from killing you. Very, very likely by the same organizations that had done it to somebody previously, and not decide to open up the documents. Let the American public see exactly what happened to John F. Kennedy, because I guarantee you there is parallels to what happened to Trump. Guarantee it. The same shadowy governmental institutions that are being protected by keeping the JFK documents classified are very, very likely the same institutions who should be questioned surrounding Trump's assassination attempt. Just saying.
You know what it looks like, Director? It looks like you won't answer some pretty basic questions. It looks like you got a 9% raise and you cut corners when it came to protecting one of the most important individuals, most well-known individuals on the planet. A former president, likely the guy who's going to be the next president. It looks like you guys were cutting corners. That's what it looks like to me. Is that true?
I am here today because I want to answer questions, but I also want to be cautious.
You might want to, but you haven't answered. I don't think you've answered one question from the chairman, the ranking member, or me. Well, we got a lot of other people asking. We'll see if your record improves. But right now, you haven't answered, I don't think, any questions. I yield back.
So here goes. Here's just a very specific example of a Democrat who is in this committee who is using this platform. This is a old ass bag of human skin. This woman must be 90 years old. But she's reading from a piece of paper the entire time, and she starts to espouse gun issues instead of directly talking about the situation. Here you go.
By a civil rights
Miss
activist who
Norton.
showed me around town and tried to convince me to work in Jackson that summer. I recall talking with him and his wife
Nobody cares.
to the bus station for my outside his home.
Here we go.
Violence, gun. See, I want to discuss one of the roots of political violence, guns. For years, Republicans, including a member of this committee, have introduced legislation and amendments to repeal or block the District of Columbia gun violence protection laws, including its bans on assault weapons and large capacity magazines. The shooter at the Trump rally used the mass shooter's gun of choice, an assault weapon, specifically an AR-15 style rifle, and presumably a large capacity magazine, which is a political...
This woman could not even read her own speech. It is amazing. It is unbelievable that these people are in office when they couldn't drive a car in everyday life. She's reading from a piece of paper, being told exactly what to espouse, and uses this platform where the presidential candidate, ex-president of the United States, had a bullet graze his ear and trying to bring it about gun rights when she's talking to the security, the director of the Secret Service, and she wants to bring up guns. It's amazing. There's only a couple people like this, surprisingly, throughout the entirety of this conversation. But it is absolutely crazy to see how many times just in the opportunity that you have to question her, that they bring up this type of platform. Now, the next person that we'll listen to is going to be, because I don't want to take up too much time here just listening to person by person, but here's an interesting point of conversation that I think should be listened to. Now, this is from,
could stop a train.
See if they give us a name here, because surprisingly, I don't know all these
Recognizes Mr. Fallon from Texas.
Mr.
How
Fallon.
did a 20-year-old loner with a week's notice pick the absolute best location to assassinate President Trump when the entire Secret Service missed it? Director Cheatle, in your leadership, your agency got outsmarted and outmaneuvered by a 20-year-old. How can we have any confidence that you could stop trained professionals from a nefarious nation state?
Those are absolutely questions that we need to have.
I know they're
answers
questions,
to.
but
These are absolutely questions that we should have answered. Yeah. Answer the question, bitch. What? That is one of the worst workarounds on an answer to a question. That is absolutely a question that we should have answers to. Yeah. Answer the question, director. And it's a great question. If a 20-year-old with no military experience, a 20-year-old with no tactical training, a 20-year-old with very, very little ability to actually even see the location, had the ability to bypass the Secret Service, to find the perfect location to position themselves outside of the purview of what Secret Service would be able to protect Trump from. If a 20-year-old child had the opportunity to do this, Russia, Iran, any one of these foreign adversaries, China, if we're supposed to believe that a 20-year-old can bypass our Secret Service without anybody knowing and almost eliminate the president of the United States with very, very little effort or resistance, how can we have any any confidence that China, Iran, Russia, any one of these organizations, any one of these countries that are our foreign adversaries wouldn't be able to kill Trump with a toothpick, wouldn't be able to perfectly execute this without any trace whatsoever. How can we have any confidence? So let's see what her response is to that. That's a great positioned question.
The fact of the matter is we can't have that confidence. Director, do you have the ability personally, and do you have the authority to beef up security of any of your protectees?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So were you also aware there was a credible threat President Trump was facing? He was facing a heightened security threat to a foreign adversary?
Yes.
Iran.
Okay. So given that there was an increased threat to President Trump's life, was he provided a full security complement akin to what a sitting U.S. president would receive?
He was provided a full complement of security based on the threat assessment that we had.
That's not my question.
And the venue.
My question is, if he'd been the sitting president, would he have had the same security he had on July 13th, or would have been beefed up?
There is a difference between the sitting president
So your answer is he didn't.
and continuity of government and the responsibility
So he
that we
did
have.
not. Okay, there wasn't a CAT team, a full CAT team on site. There wasn't counter-surveillance teams on site. But this is the thing. You just said you had the ability to beef up the security. You knew about the threat, and you didn't. And that's as telling as it is chilling. We have satellite images from the Butler Fairgrounds. Have you visited the site?
No, I have not.
9 days and you have not visited the site. You should have been there that night. Did you talk to, that evening, did you talk to the team, the heroes that surrounded the president? Did you call them that night?
They were still operational working.
So that's an
for
answer is
protection
no. Did you call them the next
of the
day?
President. Yes, I spoke with
You called them the very next day, not the day of, or was it 72 hours after?
I don't know the timeline, but I spoke with
Okay,
them
because you're under oath.
immediately
I
following.
think it was 72 hours after. You waited 3 days. What is immediately clear is that there are a number of structures that need to be secured. Of these, Director, other than the first, immediate 4, what's the most dangerous site that should have been secured? Because Security 101, you got to mitigate the high ground.
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what the next most dangerous site, what was the closest structure to the president, other than the 4 immediate ones that you had your counter-sniper teams on?
There are a number of structures around that event site.
You know who the shooter knew? The shooter has visited the site 2 more times than you have, and he had a drone, and he picked the AGR building. So you said, do you remember in an ABC interview you did that you didn't have people on the roof of the AGR building because you were worried about safety because of the slope?
I recall that statement.
Okay. Does the Secret Service have written policy you can share with us about slope roofs?
No.
Okay. So why'd you act like there was one? Because is it your practice to comment on enormous events of enormous national implications when you're ignorant of the facts? That's rhetorical. So here's this thing with the slopes. You go all up to like 1812. You can go to a 112, which is about as flat as you can get without it being completely flat. And you're saying that there was a danger, safety concern there. But the problem is, Director, you put your counter snipers on a 312 roof, which is steeper than the 112. And by the way, the 112 is ADA compliant. You can build a ramp for a wheelchair on a 112 roof. So these are nothing but pathetic excuses, and they make no sense, and they're a bunch of cow dung. All the law enforcement I've spoken with over the last 9 days are amazed that the AGR rooftop was not secure. And you want to know why? Because it's dangerous. I have never had any long gun training in my life. I own an AR-15, and last time I shot it one time my whole life. It was 6 years ago. That is until Saturday, where we recreated the events in Savoy, Texas, where we recreated what happened in Butler. I was lying prone on a sloped roof at 130 yards at 6:30 at night. And I knew that he had a scope. I didn't know what kind, red dot or magnified. So I shot 8 rounds from both. You know what the result was? 15 out of 16 kill shots. And the one I missed would have hit the president's ear. That's a 94% success rate. And that shooter was a better shot than me. It is a miracle President Trump wasn't killed. Corey Comparatore's life is over because that damn shooter made it on the roof. And it wasn't the roof that was dangerous. It was the nut job on top of the roof. You know what else is dangerous? I believe your horrifying ineptitude and your lack of skilled leadership is a disgrace. Your obfuscating today is shameful. And you should be fired immediately and go back to Garden Doritos. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Ooh, that was a good one. And I like what he said there. I haven't shot a long gun in 6 years, and I recreated this event and had a 94% accuracy, and 94% of the time I would have killed the president from the very same position that this individual missed. And he's probably a better shot than me, is what he said. Now, obviously not, because that child missed. But that's scary. Somebody with no training, somebody with no practice, somebody with very, very little opportunity prior to the event to shoot at all was able to hit a 94% accuracy at the same length, the same position, same everything. There's no other explanation for the reason that Trump's alive other than the fact that by the grace of God, he turned his head. And maybe even not when we look at some of the second shooter situations, when we look at the possibility that there was somebody else who was also propped up. Some people say on the water tower. Some people are saying in other positions. But there's a secondary position that many, many people believe another shooter was there doing the same exact thing and also missed, which is even more a testament to the potential of divine intervention here. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene questioned her. I wasn't very impressed with her line of questioning, but who I was impressed with was this woman right here. Let's see if I can pull her up here because she was on fire. Here we go.
You're here with a subpoena, and we expect you to answer the questions. Chair now recognizes Ms. Mace from South Carolina.
Thank you,
Ms.
Mr.
Mace, South
Chairman.
Carolina.
Director Cheatle, the American people are watching, and they're wondering if there are any questions you can answer honestly today. So, Director Cheatle, I have a series of questions, very specific questions. I want very specific answers. Most of my questions are going to demand a yes or no answer. Do you understand?
I do.
Okay, my first question. Both sides of the aisle today have asked for your resignation. Would you like to use my 5 minutes to draft your resignation letter, yes or no?
No, thank you.
Was this a colossal failure?
It was a failure.
Yes or no? Was it a colossal failure is the question, yes or no?
I have admitted this is a terrible...
This is a yes or no series of questions. Was this a colossal failure, yes or no?
Yes.
Was this tragedy preventable, yes or no?
Yes.
Has the Secret Service been transparent with this committee?
Yes.
Would you say the fact that we had to issue a subpoena to get you to show up today as being transparent, yes or no?
I have always been
Yes
eager to
or no?
come
You didn't
and
want to
talk
answer
to
the question.
committee.
We had to issue a subpoena to get you to show up today. That is not transparent, by the way. You stated earlier.
Which is crazy that the director of the Secret Service needs to be subpoenaed just to show up to respond to an assassination attempt that was millimeters away from killing a presidential nominee and ex-president. That's crazy. That right there is the most indicative statement surrounding her intentions in this meeting right here is the fact that she wouldn't even show up unless she was legally obligated to answer these questions in front of the United States of America, the American people. It is unbelievable, jarring, flooring that this woman would not absolutely raise her hand, walk in front of this public and say, let me say, if I was in her position, and guess what? She wasn't there. She wasn't the one responding. She was the one directing it. And very likely there's many people below her who were making the decisions that she's talking about. What she should have gone up here and said, if I was her, let me put on my pantsuit and my shortcut hair and my bitchy demeanor and say this. This was absolutely terrifying. We were under-equipped. We had not taken this type of threat serious enough. We got lazy and comfortable, and that will never happen again under my watch. There is no reason that this shooter should not have been eliminated immediately upon finding it. There's no reason that the public surrounding this building should have been able to point out this threat prior to our trained professionals. There is no reason that we shouldn't have been surveilling this area to the extent that this could have never been even a potential of happening, let alone getting to the point where he shot his ear. This is a colossal, to use her words, fuck up, and it will never happen again under my watch. I have learned my lesson. I have at this point understand the severity of my position, and I will do everything in my power moving forward to prevent this situation from occurring again. That's the response that you make to every single one of these people. You're right, this is a mess up. You're right, this was terrible. You're right, we messed up. You're right that we should have surveilled it. You're right that we should have known this was a threat. But guess why she can't make that statement? Because as many people have speculated, this was not by accident. This was by design. Whether she got orders from somebody far above her, and as she's obviously been trained in this situation to not answer a single question. You see the FBI director, you see the Secret Service director, you see the CIA director, all in this hot seat. And they all answer questions the same way. They don't answer them. Ever. Not one. And the reason that they do that is because they're implicating themselves. And the reason that they do that, and the reason that they're sitting in front of these committees and answering the questions this way is because they're not accountable to the American public. They're not accountable to the average citizen. They're not accountable to you. They're not accountable to me. They're not accountable to the president. We are the enemy of these three-letter agencies. We are the enemy of the Secret Service. We are the enemy. We are the people who are sitting there trying to hold them accountable from doing whatever it is that they think that they should be doing, that they want to do. They are going to do whatever they want and rub it in your face. And then when you ask them to show up, they're not going to do it unless you give them a legal letter saying they're going to jail if they don't. They're not accountable to you. They think the American public are stupid. They think Congress is stupid. They think this hearing is stupid. You are the enemy of these organizations. They are not here for your best interest. They're here for politics. They're here to line their own pockets, right? I wonder how much money this woman's worth, right? That's a good question too. Where's the money coming from? They're not on your side. None of them. Not a single one of them. Not a single one of these directors. We've heard this over and over again about the CIA, the FBI, and now, the Secret Service is a new one for me that I haven't heard too much about it. And honestly, if this was conducted by the CIA or the FBI, obviously the Secret Service would have to be in on it to allow such incompetence. But that's the only justifiable explanation for such incompetence is intention. It's the only thing that makes sense here. Why would there be so much incompetence at the highest levels? The only explanation is intention.
Earlier, Secret Service is not political. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Would you say leaking your opening statement to Punchbowl News, Politico's Playbook, and Washington Post several hours before you sent it to this committee as being political? Yes or no?
I have no idea how my statement got out.
Well, that's bullshit. So, Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record articles by Punchbowl News, Political Playbook, Washington Post, all done at 5:24 a.m., 6:12 a.m., 6:34 a.m., a solid 3 to 4 hours before this committee got your statement.
Without objection, so ordered.
Okay. Is the Secret Service fully cooperating with our committee?
Yes.
Okay, you say you're fully cooperating with this committee. On July 15th, this committee sent you a list of demands of information that we wanted. Has the Secret Service provided this committee a complete list of all law enforcement personnel that were there that day? Have you done that? Have you provided a list to the Oversight Committee? Yes or no?
I will have to get back to you on that.
That is a no. Have you provided all audio and video recordings in your possession to this committee, as we asked on July 15th, yes or no?
I would have to get back to you.
That is a no. You're full of shit today. You're just being completely dishonest.
Mr. Chairman,
Completely dishonest.
Chairman, I want to
I'm
Come
gonna
on.
We have to
continue.
maintain decorum in this committee,
Any,
no matter
have
how
you provided
upset we
any
get.
and all memos to this committee that we've asked you on July 15th? Have you provided all memorandums within the Secret Service?
I would have to get back to you on
That is a no. You are being dishonest or lying. Like, you're being dishonest here with this committee. These are important questions that the American people want answers to, and you're just dodging and talking around it in generalities. And we had to subpoena you to be here, and you won't even answer the questions. We have asked you repeatedly to answer our questions. This isn't hard. These are not hard questions. Have you provided us all communications from the Secret Service related to that day and that rally? Have you provided this committee? We've asked for this information on July 15th. Have you provided any of this information that this committee has asked of the Secret Service? Any of it?
I'll have to get back to you.
Have you even read this letter that we sent you? Did you even read this?
Yes.
Okay, and you have said you don't know, you have no idea. The answer is no. We haven't gotten a single document or piece of information or data from you or your agency in related to the rally that we have asked you for. So, was this attempted assassination of Donald Trump a failure of training or execution or both?
I think that those are answers that we need to
Training,
examine.
execution, or both? Which one?
So that's her. Now, as you go on here, there's only one more portion of this that I want to show you. And the reason that I want to show this to you, because the Fox News feed, the live feed that you saw, was doctored when it came to this oversight committee. Fox News was in real time editing the oversight committee hearing with the Secret Service. They didn't want you to hear something in the Secret Service hearing. And I wonder why. That's the big question here. Why would Fox News eliminate just one sentence, one conspiracy theory from the Oversight Committee hearing, from the live feed? This wasn't like a video that they doctored after to edit down to the most interesting portions of it. No, they in real time eliminated one question, one theory throughout all of this. This entire hearing, 4 hours and 57 minutes, and Fox News cut this 15 seconds from the Oversight Committee hearing regarding Donald Trump's assassination attempt. So let me show you what that is. We'll compare and contrast this against the other sources here and maybe make some speculations as to why.
Of the Secret Service.
Now, this is actually,
Chairman.
I don't know who this is. I'm not aware of him, but he did a tremendous job. I'm not sure if he's a Republican or a Democrat or whatever, but he did a great job. Here it is.
Director Cheatle, how long have you been with the Secret Service? 29 years, right?
That's correct.
And how long have you been director of the Secret Service?
Just under 2 years.
During your tenure as director under the Secret Service, I know we're here today to talk about the assassination attempt on President Trump, but how many other security lapses have occurred with protectees under your watch?
I don't have a specific number, but there have been some lapses.
There have been other lapses. Was one of them Jake Sullivan?
Yes, sir.
What happened there?
There was an individual who was able to access Mr. Sullivan's residence.
His residence. A protectee, somebody was able to break into his house. And what happened? Did anyone get fired because of that?
There were individuals who have been reassigned.
Reassigned. What other steps have taken? What I'm seeing. What other incidents have occurred other than Jake Sullivan? Was there an issue with the Secret Service agent and Vice President Harris?
I would not call that a security incident.
Well, it seems to me, I mean, you have security lapses with President Trump. You have security lapses with Jake Sullivan. You have issues with your personnel related to Vice President Kamala Harris. There seems to be a repeated theme here. Would you not agree with that?
I think that we are talking about separate categories of incidents.
Well, I would disagree with that. I mean, I think there's a repeated theme when you've got protectees and you're not upholding your core mission. Let me ask you something else. Does the Secret Service routinely record communications between and amongst detail?
Radio communications?
Any communication?
Email communications are captured, as well as text messages, and then depending on the detail, radio communications are recorded.
Does the Secret Service have recorded communications from the July 13th event?
We do not have radio communications from that day.
But you have text messages?
We do have emails and text messages.
Emails, okay, great. Does the head of the Trump detail or someone else embedded in this detail have command decision-making authority, or do they need to seek authorization from someone outside that detail?
The head of the detail has the decision-making authority for things that are necessary for that detail.
Is that standard for protection details?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Let me ask you something. During campaign events, is it common for the Secret Service to utilize other agencies?
Yes, it is.
What other agencies would be providing assistance to the Secret Service?
There are a number of other agencies that provide assistance to the Secret Service during campaigns. We utilize personnel from the Department of Homeland Security. We utilize personnel from the Department of Defense, and we utilize local law enforcement partners.
Are you on the same radios? Do you provide the radios to all the assets that are taking part in protection of an event?
We provide radios to the personnel from the Department of Homeland Security that are assisting us.
But not local law enforcement?
Local law enforcement is working on their own radios.
Are you on the same frequency?
We ensure that we have counterparts in the security room, and so the local law enforcement will place one of their personnel in the security room with our personnel so that we have interoperability communications.
Let me ask you something just about the timeline, because I think this is really interesting that we can't nail that down. I mean, I think there are lay people out there with more knowledge about the timeline than you seem to come before a subpoena in front of Congress. Was Mr. Crooks observed at the AGR building prior to the shooting?
So we're coming up to that, but I think that's interesting because especially when you understand that when the communications that are happening, she says, yes, we record email. It's like, yeah, bitch, my Gmail is recorded. Like what? Like, yeah, of course you have email being recorded. Of course you have text messages being recorded. Now, something that comes up in this committee hearing is that she routinely utilizes foreign technology, foreign applications like Telegram, like WhatsApp, like these types of encrypted technology, but not really encrypted. Encrypted to the point that maybe like your random hacker can't get to it, but encrypted to the point where the governments of the institutions that like the institutions that own that, like the governments surrounding them, absolutely have access to WhatsApp, absolutely have access to Telegram. It's not foolproof, but she has stated during this hearing, I don't know at what point I listened to this majority of this today, but at some point she talks about and gets grilled on the fact that she is using something like Telegram to message people that work for her within the Secret Service, which is a huge no. You're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to message on some outside country's encrypted technology if you're the Secret Service. So that's one thing. Now, what we're going to find here in just a second is the preemptive loss, like the organized elimination of a portion of this conversation that is very, very telling. So it's coming up here in just a second. So make sure you're listening.
He was observed on the grounds outside of our perimeter prior to the shooting.
At approximately what time was that? You don't have to give me the specific minute, but at approximately what time was that?
I believe it was about 45 minutes or so prior to.
Did the sniper team take a photo of Mr. Crooks?
The local team did, yes.
So it was a local team and not a Secret Service sniper?
That took the photo.
Okay. And did he relay that photo to Central Command?
Again, it's an active ongoing investigation, so I want to make sure that I'm factual with the route that photo took and who that was disseminated to and when.
What time did when did Mr. Crooks' status go from a suspicion, a person that was under suspicion, to a threat? When did that happen? And maybe not even a specific time, Director Cheatle, maybe a certain event that happened that transformed him from a person of suspicion to a threat. When did that happen?
To the best of my knowledge, based on what I have been told thus far, it's approximately 5 minutes to where individuals relayed that there was an incident being, or an issue, I'm sorry, being worked at the 3 o'clock of the president.
So that was, but it was before the shots were fired?
That is correct, but again, it was not phrased as a threat. It was just that something was being worked.
Yeah, but my question is, when did he become, when did he transform from suspicion to threat? Because
also, that's not normal English. Nobody says something was being worked. Like, you're just trying to skirt the idea that he was a threat. You don't say something was being worked.
When did he transform from suspicion to threat? Because they're treated very differently. People can be suspicious, but they're not a threat until a certain point in time. So when did that happen?
I believe that it was seconds before the gunfire started.
Seconds. My gosh, we actually have a few questions that we got answered today. Listen, I'm going to wrap up here, Mr. Chairman, but here's the frustration that people have. The buck stops with you. You've said that yourself. But the problem in Washington, D.C., it is the only town in America that you can be so bad at your job that you actually get a promotion or don't get fired. You have not been able to answer the number of agents, whether or not requests were denied on additional security, whether or not law enforcement were able to engage before the shooting with the assassin, how he got on the roof, how the rifle got on the roof. You can't tell us how many shots he fired, whether the casings were recovered. You can't tell us anything about his cell phone. You can't tell us whether the rally was supposed to be postponed, given the intelligence that you were receiving. You can't tell us whether the car had a bomb. You can't even tell us his motive. And the American people are incredibly distrustful because it has taken 9 days to even get a scintilla of evidence out of you. Maybe if I was CNN or ABC or NBC, I would have gotten much more thorough and accurate information, but we have not received that in a subpoenaed hearing in front of this Congress. That is why the American people are frustrated, and I echo the bipartisan calls on this committee and all across this country that you should resign, or maybe when the president wakes up from his nap, he can fire you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair now recognizes Ms. Luna from Florida.
Director Cheatle, can you please give me the names?
That actually was not what I was looking for. But I do think, nonetheless, it's a great statement. It perfectly explains exactly what was skirted through that conversation. Now, while I find this here, let me see if I can find the exact conversation where I'm talking about here, where they completely skirt it. And I'll give you a preemption to this because I do have the quote here. Let me see if I can find the exact point and who it was by. But if you go to Twitter and you go to the Austin J. Adams in my new account, there we go. That's the guy. Okay, let me find this guy because he's the one who brought up the point. He's the one who everybody was. Here we go. Here he is. This is where Fox News decides to cut out a large portion of the conversation. Not a large portion, but a very, very specific point.
So you use some form of an...
I informed him that the request clarify, you didn't ask it's possible.
You're communicating with colleagues.
I don't communicate government business with colleagues on a personal device. I communicate on my work device.
Are you using an encrypted device on your work device?
I am not.
No encrypted apps?
No, I do not.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair now
so that's what I was talking about when she talks about like using external
the former president
encrypted apps with
when can
Secret
we
Service
expect that?
agents.
How long?
We will make them available as soon as possible.
I think almost certain that violates some federal. It's shocking to me that we are communicating in a encrypted app to colleagues. I'm almost certain that violates some federal laws.
I would like to clarify, you didn't ask me whether my communications were government work related or whether they were personally related.
You're communicating with colleagues.
I don't communicate government business with colleagues on a personal device. I communicate on my work device.
Are you?
So why would you message other Secret Service agents on an encrypted app for things that are not business related and not just use regular text messages? That's weird.
Using an encrypted device on your work device?
I am not.
No encrypted apps.
No, I do not.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Waltz from
Very
Florida.
interesting. Now, this is the guy that brings it up that Fox News cuts a
Thank you, Mr.
very
Chairman.
specific portion of his points.
Madam Director, please, I'd like to direct your attention to this video.
And I sincerely appreciate the clarity on this.
Can we turn up the volume, staff?
I want to ask you, because this has popped up. Republican Congressman Mike
but it's a good
Walz,
point.
he said on social media on Saturday, and I'm going to read this for you because it does
They're
talk about
showing
you, Secretary.
Mayorkas
I have
here.
very reliable sources telling me that there have been repeated requests for stronger Secret Service protection for President Trump denied by Secretary Mayorkas. Your department has already pushed back on that, calling that absolutely false, but he is putting this on you. Can you respond to that, please?
Well, that's a baseless and irresponsible statement, and is one that is unequivocally false.
Director Cheatle, did you speak with your boss, Secretary Mayorkas? You fall under DHS. Did you speak with him on the 14th, the day after?
Yes, I did.
So you spoke with him before he made that statement?
I spoke with him immediately following the incident.
Did you inform him that all requests for additional resources for President Trump had been fulfilled? Or that it was false to say they had been denied?
I informed him that the request for that rally that day had been fulfilled.
Okay, you continue to answer that very carefully. Because I made a broader statement. The agents that came to me made a broader statement that his permanent protective detail for years now have been asking for more. Is that correct?
I do not have specific incidents of those requests.
Is it correct that they've been asking for more?
I have heard the same reports that you have. Without having them in front of me, I am unable.
Those requests are made in writing. I mean, the agents are telling me they make them in writing. This isn't a verbal agency. Things are made in writing.
I understand what you're saying. I don't have those requests in front of me here.
I'm not asking if you have them in front of you. Are you aware that they were made?
As I said earlier, there are times when requests are made, and depending on the availability of assets, or if there is a way that
So there were times when they were denied.
if there is a way that vulnerability can be mitigated in a different way, then that is why
So there are times when they were denied for a variety of reasons.
That is why the Secret Service has a multi-layered and multifaceted security plan so that we can pivot if we need to.
In the wake, in the immediate 48 hours of an assassination attempt on a former president, could be the next leader of the free world, almost had his head blown off, your boss says that's irresponsible and false to say things are denied. And you had talked to him. So did he just make that up on his own, or did you tell him that?
We were speaking about the requests made at the rally.
Staff, can we show the next slide, please? Then we have your spokesman. Did you sign off on this statement? That there's an assertion that a member of the former president's team requested additional security resources and those were rebuffed? This is absolutely false. In fact, we added protective resources and technology and capability as part of the increased campaign travel tempo. But next slide, please. Next slide, please, staff. We have the Washington Post article that then says we now have senior Secret Service officials saying there were at times when it was denied. So which is it?
Again, there have been a number of conversations going on here.
Did you sign off on that spokesman's statement?
The spokesman's statement, I believe, was related to requests that were made.
Did you sign off on it?
For the requests that were made at the rally.
Did you sign off on the statement before it went out? I sign off on my press spokesman's statement before they go out. I would hope you would in the wake of an assassination attempt.
Yes.
You did. Categorically false that any requests were made. You signed off on it. Thank you for that. Thank you for that clarity. Madam Director, how many press conferences have you held since the assassination attempt?
We have put out press releases.
How many press conferences have you held? Gone to the mic, taken questions from the public, from the media? How many?
I have not held any.
How many has Secretary Mayorkas held?
I don't.
0. How many has the FBI held? 0. How many has the Department of Justice held? I know you know the answer.
I believe there was a press conference in Butler after the incident occurred.
By local law enforcement.
And the side eye that he gave her when he had to say that, because she knew that. She knew that she was just like the traps that are being laid here is actually quite impressive by some of these people. But yeah, absolutely. Here we go. Here, this is like, I know I've been saying this for a minute, but this is exactly what we're talking about.
Not by you and not by the Department of Homeland Security. So
not you.
This is
not
how
Hermione.
Misinformation flies. I mean, in the darkness, in the absence of information. Now we have 9 days later before a congressional committee. We all represent almost 1 million people. And
so here it is. This is the exact quote that I want you to pay attention to. This is exactly what Fox News decided to omit. Not omit, actively during a live feed of your representatives having a conversation with another representative, decided to completely eliminate. And you know it's intentional when you see the timestamps. They perfectly stopped this one sentence from being in the live feed. Again, this was not a video. This was not an edited video after the fact. This was a live feed video that Fox News and everybody was calling this in the chat. Did you see that glitch? Did you see the glitch? Did you see the glitch? Did you see the glitch? So what I did when I was watching this live is I went over to AP, the Associated Press, and I saw their feed of it. And I went back to this exact same portion. And I was like, what? Why? Why would there be such a weird glitch? I gave them the benefit of the doubt. I thought maybe there's a reason. Maybe the video feed messed up. Maybe there's a reason. But when you see the timestamps, you see the conversations, you see exactly the transcription that says, here is what was cut out of this. It all makes sense. There was a very, very specific portion of the live feed of the Secret Service director that was cut out completely because they don't want you to hear this. They don't want you to question it. They don't want this narrative. And there's a reason for that. Here it is.
And you still don't have answers. Are you aware that national news anchors are saying this was a hoax? On national television, they're saying, no, the president wasn't shot. It was flying glass. Are you aware of that? Shooter had over...
Oh, there it is. If you're not watching this on YouTube, you can't see it, but it cut right between that. Are you aware of this?
No, the president wasn't shot. It was flying glass. Are you aware of that? Shooter had...
Cut right there. Shooter had. That's not a full sentence. They cut the clip. They cut it out. Now, again, I don't know how they did this, but they absolutely intentionally did this. They cut out the very, very same portion of this. Now, if we go to AP and we see what the actual portion of this was, it will make sense. And I'm just going to share my video that I pulled of this because it's easier than finding it. But this was the actual quote here. Let me see. Maybe not, but it is crazy to see that this is what they pulled out of it in real time. Again, I know live feed videos pretty well. I'm fairly familiar with how to do video editing. I mean, you guys see all my stuff. Like I'm pretty well versed in this stuff. I don't know how they did this. It had to be absolutely intentional. So we're going to look up AP Oversight Committee. And here it is. So you can go to probably any number of other organizations' coverage of this and see. Here it is. Okay. So now, here's the same conversation from AP.
Or that it was false to say they had been denied.
That day had been fulfilled.
Okay. And the agents that came to me have been
Specific incident. I have heard the same report.
writing. I mean, the agents are,
I understand what you're
they
saying.
were made
As I said earlier, if there is a way to be mitigated
for a variety of reasons.
so that we can pivot.
Assassination attempt on a former president, could be the next leader of the free world, almost had his head blown off. Your boss says that's irresponsible and false to say things are denied. And you had talked to him.
We're speaking.
Can we show the next slide? Absolutely false. In fact, so which is it? Off of my press spokesman's statement before they go out, I would have on it. Thank you for that. Thank you for that clarity. Madam Director, how many press conferences have you?
There's the same quote. Okay.
0.
This is how misinformation flies. I mean, in the darkness, in the absence of information. Now we have 9 days later before a congressional committee. We all represent almost 1 million people, and you still don't have answers. Are you aware that national news anchors are saying this was a hoax? On national television, they're saying, no, the president wasn't shot. It was flying glass. Are you aware of that?
So that was where it cut. Right there. That's where they cut the footage on a live feed on Fox News. This is what you missed.
I have not heard those reports.
Are you aware that, I mean, there are rumors rampant online that there were multiple shooters?
Yes.
Are you aware that because the...
Are you aware that because... Again, let's listen to that one more time. Why would Fox News cut from the live footage the accusation, an agreement by the head of the Secret Service that there is conspiracy theories that there was multiple shooters?
That national news anchors are saying this was a hoax? On national television, they're saying, no, the president wasn't shot. It was flying glass. Are you aware of that?
I have not heard those reports.
Are you aware that, I mean, there are rumors rampant online that there were multiple shooters?
Yes.
Are you aware that because the shooter had overseas encrypted platforms in Belgium and New Zealand and in Germany, that a lot of people are speculating there could have been foreign involvement, logically? Are you aware of that?
Yes.
And
Okay, so there is the AP version. And if we go back to the Fox News version, you'll see that that was perfectly cut out of the live feed. Here it is. Here's the remainder of that clip from Fox.
they're saying, no, the president wasn't shot. It was flying glass. Are you aware of that? Shooter had
Cut.
overseas encrypted platforms in Belgium and New Zealand.
So they go from, are you aware there's a conspiracy theory that, oh, this is all a hoax, glass was actually what cut him? Okay. Then it moves on to, are you aware he had a Telegram or whatever other overseas communication platforms? They completely skipped the portion that said there was multiple shooters. Completely skipped it. That was intentional, 100%. And I may be the only person on the internet, on social media, the only person right here, I may be the only person who caught this because I went cross-referenced other conversations, cross-referenced other live news organizations to see the exact point that Fox News cut this out of the Secret Service Oversight Committee hearing. They cut it out that there was multiple shooters. So it makes you question why? Why would they not want you to hear this? Why would they not want there to be a conversation around, was there multiple shooters? Well, maybe the same reason they didn't want you questioning whether there was multiple shooters in the John F. Kennedy assassination attempt. Not attempt, but like they assassinated him. Maybe the same reason. The reason is there was multiple shooters. Absolutely was multiple shooters. Whether it was the guy in the front of the car that turned around and fired his weapon and hit John F. Kennedy in the head, whether it was the second shooter on the grassy knoll, whether it was, there was absolutely multiple shooters for John F. Kennedy. There was very likely a potential that there was multiple shooters in Donald Trump's assassination attempt. And it is by the grace of God that he's alive today. But Fox News doesn't want you to know that. That's why in the live feed of the hearing, they cut it out of the live feed. That is absolutely unbelievable, crazy, very telling. They don't want you questioning the narrative. Was there multiple shooters? Now, there's been several videos covering this. Several videos that have had this conversation. But some of the more interesting parts of this was that there was I believe there was a hearing, potentially, or not a hearing. There was a study that was conducted by, let's see here. There was a very, very serious study that was conducted that showed that there was a very likely potential assassination attempt on Trump. Was there multiple shooters? This comes from the Times of India. It says former President Trump was greeting former U.S. President Donald Trump received an enthusiastic welcome from his supporters. See if we can scroll to the part where it talks about it. Okay. It says, as per a Substack by Stephen Bryan, former Deputy Under Secretary of Defense, despite the FBI's assertion that the identified shooter acted alone, this controversial audio forensic analysis raises questions that warrant further investigation and peer review. Beyond the audio forensic, other aspects of the incident require attention. The initial burst of gunfire originated from the identified shooter's location. A second burst was detected from an unclear location, distinct from the first. Additionally, there may have been a third shooter who fired a single shot. Forensic acoustic experts propose the involvement of at least two shooters, excluding the Secret Service snipers. Moreover, the exact number of shots fired by the Secret Service snipers on the rooftop behind Trump is unknown. Most reports indicate that it took only one shot to neutralize the shooter. The agents equipped with the sophisticated sniper weapons, one mounted on a tripod and the other on a small stand for a prone shot, are believed to have fired after the shooter initiated gunfire. The Secret Service snipers did their job, but there is still questions about the timing of the threat that could have been eliminated much sooner. So, there is forensic science going on right now, audio acoustical science analysis, scientific analysis that has shown that there is a very high potential that there could have been a second or even a third shooter surrounding Donald Trump's assassination attempt. Now, they want to have the lone gunman theory, the same lone gunman theory they want you to believe today around JFK's assassination. And how close were we to that being the case here? It's bone chilling to think that we could be mourning the death of Donald Trump today. Now, on the back of this, there's another interesting article that comes out talking about the assassin's connection. So even if there was a lone shooter, did he have connections to three-letter agencies? Did he have connections to foreign adversaries? Did he have connections to what happened here? What was his motive? They still don't have a motive. So this came from the Oversight Project, Oversight PR on Twitter. An assassination info drop. We found the assassin's connections through our in-depth analysis of mobile ad data to track movements of Crooks and his associates. To do this, we tracked devices that regularly visited both Crooks' home and place of work and followed them. And this follows this direct line of sight here. Why a special commissioner, not a task force, is needed. This cannot be business as usual. Okay. This says that someone who regularly visited Crooks' home and work also visited a building in Washington, D.C. located in Gallery Place. This is the same vicinity of an FBI office on June 26th of 2023. Whose device is this? So, another device linked to Crooks visited Plymouth, Massachusetts via Pittsburgh to Boston flight. And then it says, we found a device linked to Crooks' work that traveled to Butler, Pennsylvania on July 4th and July 8th. And this device stopped all activity on July 12th. On August 30th of 2023, one device linked Crooks' visit to Allegheny Arms. Here's the relevant locations within Bethel Park, Pennsylvania that are linked to both Crooks' home and place of work. So, For those tracking this type of data, we identified devices that were located at Crook's home and his work within the past year. There were at least 9 devices linked to these ADIDs. But you get the idea, right? Very interesting. So this, whatever this committee is, tracked data back to the individuals who were in close contact with this 20-year-old kid and found that they were in location of the FBI. They were close to locations that were surrounding Butler, Pennsylvania, scoping this out just days and days before the assassination attempt that were not him. Not him. How interesting. Who were these people? Why were they doing this? Oversight Project or Oversight PR on Twitter regularly visited his home and work. Also visited a building in Washington, D.C., located in Gallery Place, the same vicinity as the FBI office. Very interesting. Now, that leads us to Joe Biden. Many people are speculating that Joe Biden may be dead, including this person right here, Tucker Carlson, reading this very clip. Let's go ahead and watch it from Charlie Kirk. Let's see. Here you go.
This is from Charlie Kirk. I'm reading this cold. I got a weird lead on a story people ought to look into. I got a call from a source close to Las Vegas Metro Police. The official story was that Biden's trip was cut short last week due to COVID. However, according to this source, U.S. Secret Service informed Las Vegas Metro that there was an emergency situation involving Joe Biden and to close necessary streets so that POTUS could be transported immediately to University Medical, which they began to do in earnest. Then mysteriously, there was a stand-down order, and the Secret Service informed local Vegas PD that they were going to medevac POTUS to Johns Hopkins, which they presume meant fly him back east as soon as possible. Apparently, the rumor mill in the police department was that Joe Biden was dying or already dead, possibly. I didn't think too much about this lead. It seemed too wild to be true, but given that Joe Biden has been out of public sight for days and dropped out of the race via an X post, and his brother James indicated health was a factor, I'm beginning to grow more curious if COVID or something else has been more serious than reported. If anyone with Las Vegas Metro has information, please email freedom@charliekirk.com. I want to hear if there's more to the official story than what they're telling us.
Well, I'm sure Las Vegas Metro would be just as open as forthcoming as they were during the during the October shooting.
Yeah,
in
the
2017.
worst mass shooting in American history,
which is never spoken of again.
They tried to drive me out of a camera position while I was doing a story on it. Yeah. Clearly, there's something
known for being open and forthcoming.
Yeah, like the city itself. Clearly, something is going on here. Obviously, I don't know what it is. I know its hallmark, which is secrecy. Secrecy is the hallmark of lying. So, if you want to know, is someone lying? Well, I don't know. Is he hiding something? Well, then he's lying, right? So they're lying.
So Charlie Kirk and Tucker Carlson are both giving merit to the idea that Joe Biden may very well be dead or have some sort of terminal disease that he's dealing with. Now, if you really want to get conspiratorial, you'll find that it's very interesting that just within 1 week of the failed assassination attempt, that Joe Biden drops out. What are the odds that Joe Biden drops out if the assassination attempt actually worked? If Trump is assassinated, he gets his head obliterated on live TV, and it gets shown all across every news channel, every Twitter post, everything. Trump is dead. What are the odds that Joe Biden drops out due to medical reasons? How many drugs do you think they're pumping Joe Biden full of on a daily basis? And what are the odds that they stop those drugs the second that the very, very last-ditch effort to assassinate Donald Trump falls through? Let's just play hypotheticals here. Joe Biden, his only way to win this election is by Trump dying and there being a secondary candidate that takes his place. In that case, he continues his election campaign. But they fail. It doesn't work. They miss. They hit his ear. He's stronger than ever. People love him. More people want to vote for him as a result. Well, just within 5-6 days of that, Biden decides to drop out. What are the odds of that? Is that not a clear indication that there's some correlation between the assassination attempt and his decline in popularity or decision to continue his campaign? That's what it looks like to me. Very interesting. Now, I'm not saying that's the case, but it's very interesting that just a week after an assassination attempt against Trump fails, they all of the sudden want to change candidates. Now it's Kamala. Now, what's even more interesting is that where he dropped out on was an X post. An X post without an official letterhead. An X post with very little information. An X post where people are even claiming the signature doesn't match up. That's weird. Right? That's weird. Now, what's even more interesting is that we haven't seen him in 5 days. And people are speculating that he may be deceased. That he's at a hospital right now, that he got flown out in medevaced to Johns Hopkins. All while Kamala's smiling and saying weird little statements that don't make any sense. And having him go on here and have a phone call with her during some of these. Right? Even Lauren Boebert says, I demand proof of life from Joe Biden today by 5 p.m. He needs to get in front of some camera and discuss if he's aware that he even dropped out. Hiding is completely unacceptable. Is Joe Biden even aware that he dropped out of the candidacy? Does he even know this? Right? How crazy is it that the person running his social media account, the marketing coordinator, now decides if he's running for president or not? Right now, here's Kamala saying that she's on a phone call with him. Right? But many people are speculating that this is a recording. And maybe not even a recording, but AI. And if you listen to it closely, I can see why.
President's voice.
And she even
Joe,
says
I know
it.
you're still on the call.
On the call. Hey, Joe, I know you're still on the call. What other word starts with recording? Recording. Hey, Joe, I know you're still on the recording. Oh, I mean the call. Right? And God bless Kamala Harris for just being the worst speaker ever for giving us that. That many people are saying she was just going to say recording. Right? Here you go. And when you listen to him talking, you can hear it. There's this, you've heard me do the George Orwell interviews. You've heard me do even the JFK interviews. Like, I've done this thing, is I've used this technology. You've heard it. How close is it? Go back and listen to my JFK interview. It's crazy how good this technology is. Here it is.
It is so good to hear our president's voice. Joe, I know you're still on the call.
On the call.
It is so good to hear our president's voice. Joe, I know you're still on the call, and we've been talking every day. You guys heard it from Doug's voice. We love Joe and Jill. We really do. They truly are like family to us. And we do, everybody here does.
It's mutual.
I knew you were still there. You're not going anywhere, Joe.
I'm watching you, kid. I'm watching you, kid. I love you.
I love you, Joe. Oh, it is so good.
So weird. So weird. There's a whole little section that you can hear that kind of makes it even more interesting when you actually listen to the conversation. But I see the point when people are saying maybe this is recorded, maybe this is 11 Labs, maybe this is an AI technology, maybe Joe Biden's dead, maybe he's alive, maybe he's doing well, and maybe he bowed out gracefully and messed up his signature. Maybe that's the case, but maybe he's dead. Maybe they used 11 Labs. Maybe they're holding off on this because guess what? The reason that people are speculating that Joe Biden is dead And that is because the fact that if Joe Biden is dead, if they stopped giving him all of his medications that were holding him up, holding him in Weekend at Bernie's over the last 2 years, making us think that he's actually even alive and making decisions, maybe if they stopped all that medication, then he actually did die as a result. The same week that that Trump wasn't assassinated on accident, the same week that, you know, all of this happened, maybe there's a reason for all of it. Maybe, right? Maybe it's all coincidence. Maybe it's weird. Maybe he's actually very sentient. Maybe he's better than ever. Or maybe they stopped giving him his medication after they realized he was no longer going to be the front runner, after they missed the last-ditch effort to stop Trump so that they can continue their puppet show. Well, now it's on to the next one, potentially. But maybe it's all coincidence. Who knows? Time will tell. But for now, that's some speculation for you. I hope you're having a great day. Thank you for listening. I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart. Go head over to RoninBasics.com. Get yourself a tinfoil Faraday hat to protect yourself from the harmful effects of the technology around you, a RFID blocking wallet so people can't hijack your identity and your credit cards. And until next time, thank you, my friends. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time on the Adams Archive.
Adams Archive.